Welcome back to Tutorial Tidbits and welcome to my channel. This week I have a fun effect for you with water and foam stamps on the gel plate. I've created some beautiful organic painterly soft prints that use the foam stamps in a whole different way, creating soft edges and subtle patterns. So if you've got a few minutes, let's go check it out. Welcome to the studio. So today I'm going to show you how to get the most out of your foam stamps and how to get soft, watery edges that have more of a painterly look than the straightforward stamping. So the products that I'm using, my favorite 9x12 sketch rice paper pad, because this pulls the paint off the plate like no other paper does. Super excited about the collaboration of me and Joggles and Gel Press to produce a 9x12 gel plate, which fits the 9x12 paper perfectly. So this is my 9x12 gel plate, and I've got several of my Art Nouveau foam stamps. These are just a few of the whole collection, which is available on joggles.com. The foam stamps work great for this technique. So don't judge me by my dirty gel plate. I've been playing around and I created a couple of roll-off sheets or, kind of just sheets of paper, random colors. You can do this when you're cleaning your brayer. You can do this when you're cleaning your plate or both. So these are the sheets that I'm going to pull the stamp print on. You can pull these prints on previously layered gel prints. You could pull them on old book pages, sheet music, all kinds of different things. So I'm just going to use these cleanup kind of random sheets that I have out here on my desk. And the key to this is to get the foam stamps really nice and wet. So I've got a pile of very wet paper towels here. The other thing you could do would be to have an open basin of water. But I find that I'm on my nonstick craft mat desktop, so the paper towels are going to stay nice and wet there. And so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do onto my dirty gel plate is to put out some colors. And I decided I wanted, rather than one solid color, if I was going to do one solid color, I would use the big brayer. But I'm going to do a couple of small colors, so I'm going to use the small brayer. I think this is 1.5 inch or maybe 2 inch Speedball Deluxe brayer. And I like this when I'm distributing small amounts of color to create a multicolored surface. So the first color I'm going to use is quinacridone magenta. The second color I'm going to use is ultramarine blue. And then I accidentally bought this high flow in light ultramarine blue. And I say that I accidentally bought the high flow because I usually only use the fluids because this is just too watery for my purposes. But if I blend it in with these, I'll be okay. So I figured this was a nice harmonious color palette. So let's get started. First, I'll just put out a little bit. And when you're using multiple colors on the gel plate, you need to remember, if you're using 3 colors, you need to use 1/3 as much paint in each color. Otherwise, you have way too much paint on there. So I'm just using this small brayer to sort of put this out, the ultramarine blue, a little bit on the plate. And I love this brayer for that because I can kind of curate where it goes. Then the next color I'm going to add is the quinacridone magenta. I'm going to drop some of that in my empty spaces. Looks like I've got still a little bit of, and I'm not going to clean this ultramarine off the brayer. Looks like I've still got some metallic gold on the plate from previous prints. I don't know if that'll pick up or not, but it could be nice in this mix. Okay, so we've got that. And then lastly, I'm going to put out a little bit of the light ultramarine blue. Very sparingly, because I found out, this being so liquidy, I don't want it to make everything too runny. But it's a great color. So let's put that in there. It's a little bit opaque, which is kind of cool with the other two that are more translucent. Okay, so that's kind of fun. We'll see what we get out of that. I had some crust around the edges of my plate, so I don't expect it to pick up all around the corners because I haven't cleaned it properly. Okay, so I'm going to get this really, really wet. I even want to put a little bit more water in those towels. There we go. I'm going to get this really wet and stamp into the paint and then stamp again. Then I'm going to switch the stamp. And I don't feel like I need to make it like a grid. I want it to be kind of painterly and artsy, so I'm just going to move the stamps around. And I'm getting them pretty wet. And just, now I'm dipping it into the water basin because I feel like I need even more water than the paper towels are giving me. So it's a little hard to see where I'm stamping here. So I got that one. And you want to keep, once you get paint on your foam stamps, you want to keep them face down into that wet paper towel or rinse them immediately. You don't want paint to dry on the surface of your foam stamps. Okay, so now I've got this one. I'm going to stamp that in there. And here. So basically I'm just going to stamp water from the foam stamps onto the whole surface of the paint and the gel plate. And what I'm going for is a wet and watery kind of unique print. It doesn't need to look like the foam stamps. Sometimes they come out a little bit more recognizable than others. The more water right here, it's very receded and not showing too much of the pattern. But in other places, I do see the pattern. So let's print it on this light sheet and see what we get. So this sheet started out as this base layer, the light ultramarine blue. I've got my red Baron, which I like to use to apply pressure to the back of the paper on the gel plate. I can really push from my shoulders when I need to press down. And you can see that the water is making this color bleed right through the paper. That's another beautiful thing with this sketch rice paper pad, is that paint with water will come all the way through to the other side. That means for your collage purposes, when you rip it right here, you're not going to get white edges. You're going to get periwinkle blue magenta edges. So that's very cool property of this paper. Okay, so I'm trying to apply pressure with the Baron in the corners so that perhaps I can get some of that crust to come up. And let's see what we've got. So we're going to pull this back. And I feel like we are getting most of it. There's still a little bit more the paper could absorb. And this paper was a little bit wet to begin with. Damp. Ooh, look at that. That's really pretty. So let's apply a little bit more pressure here. And I'm going to do a second one with the other sheet. Ooh, look at that. Okay, so here's our beautiful wet and watery print. The foam stamps, you can see the design is very soft and very subtle. It almost looks like a batik or a watercolor, but you do see the patterns of the foam stamps in there. And that is where the paint repelled from the water, and that's where you see the gold from the underneath print coming through. I really like the combination of the magenta and the ultramarine blue. So let's try a second one. On this one, I'm just going to do ultramarine blue. So we'll get a little bit more of a solid color on the top. So here, this is the color that was modeled with 3 different colors in the small brayer. And on this one, I'm going to use the 6-inch brayer. And I'm just going to put that ultramarine blue out on the whole surface of the plate. I think it'll also be easier for you to see the process with just one color. And now I'm going to take that damp foam stamp and press. Get it wet again and press over here. And I'm just going to move it around. And then I'm going to come in with the other design and do the same thing. And the idea is to rotate it, run it off the edges, because you're trying to create a pattern on here. It's not going to be like cookies on a cookie sheet, all lined up and apart. We want to overlap and intersect them so that we get a unique, organic, soft edge pattern with the stamps. So we got this one, I'm going to do this one. And there are other Art Nouveau stamps in this collection that may pique your creative curiosity in addition to these. Oh, you can see how the water on the stamps is making the colors kind of move away because they're beating up on the oil of the gel plate. So, oops. Okay, remember, we want to keep the surface of these wet until we can wash them. So face down into the wet paper towels, and I'm going to give it a little bit more time. You don't want to wait too long because the paint will dry. The stuff in between will dry. But if you wait a few seconds, you'll see the pattern is emerging as the water repels the paint. Okay, so we're going to print that on this magenta and gold roll-off sheet. Put that right there. The beauty of the 9x12 plate, of course, is that not only does it fit this 9x12 pad of paper, but it also perfectly fits my 9x12 stencil designs. All right, so now we'll see how this looks with the solid blue over the roll-off sheet. And we have beautiful, watery pattern. I think that the metallic is really resisting the paint and the water because this is super soft, super, super subtle. And it had more metallic on it, more so than this sheet. So I want to try another example without the metallic. So I'm going to put that and this on my bottom sheet. I'm going to create a base sheet. So we'll have sort of a purpley base sheet and the sketch rice paper. And I'll just print that here. So yeah, I think the metallic is also resisting the paint because it does that. So let's try it without the metallic, as much as I love the metallic. Okay, so this is going to be my base sheet. This could be a more interesting gel print. It could be a roll-off sheet that you have around. Like I said, it could be book pages, sheet music. Okay, so we're going to use this. It's got a little bit of gold in it, but not heavy gold. And let's see what happens when we use the light ultramarine and the ultramarine. And I'm going to use the little brayer so I don't get it all blended together. We'll keep it a little mottled. But I love this for blending multiple colors and not having them completely blended. So, okay. So here again, I'm going to take the wet foam stamp and press. Okay. Okay. So you're not going to get a crisp pattern of these foam stamps at all, but you're going to get this beautiful organic effect as the water resists. So let's try it on this one. You can see it's resisting even more. The pattern, the more water that I use, the less crisp the patterns are from the stamps. And it's just, you know, every time it's different. I've had them come out a little bit more crisp and a little bit less crisp, depending on how much water you use. So you really kind of have to play with it. So here's the without metallic. Yeah, and we do get a little bit better of contact with the paper, I think, without the metallic. This one's not quite as interesting. I have to say, the first one is my favorite. That one came out really cool. And the other thing that we could do is we could add the stamping back onto the paper. So here's the metallic gold. I'm just going to put it in a little pile there. And for this, I'm going to put it here. So for this sheet, I love it the way that it is, but if I wanted to embellish it a little, I could bring in the gold. I'm just dabbing it into the gel plate and add it back in here in a few of the darker places. So there's that. And let's go with this one. So I'm just adding it in some of the darker areas on top. I'm going to go with this one because it's a little small space there, here, and here. So now I've enhanced that watery look by adding a little bit of stamping on the top, and the stamps are still a little bit wet, so the edges are soft. But now I've brought a little bit of the gold metallic pattern on top. So I have the wet, watery pattern that's really subtle, and then I have some of the pattern on top. And like in this area right here, you could even come in with the magenta. I'll put up a little puddle of magenta on my plate. And the foam stamp is wet. Then I'm tapping it into the magenta. And I could put that in this area real soft. And it is a little wet, so that's making the pattern soft. So let's grab this one. And I'm just adding that to the lighter areas. And this one. So there, now I've really layered and enhanced this sheet by adding back on top the gold metallic and the magenta with a little bit of water on the stamp, so it's soft as the paint kind of soaks into the paper. So that one looks fabulous. That was my favorite, the first one. Now this one was a lot of resist, but we are seeing that soft, subtle pattern. So let's start by adding the metallic back in this one. So I'm just spreading out a little bit of gold metallic on my plate to use it as a stamp pad. And then I'm gonna dip the wet stamp into the metallic and add this a little bit into the dark areas. Then I'm going to come in with a different stamp design and add that into the dark areas. It's getting a little magenta from this stamp mixing in with the gold, but it looks nice. Okay. And then again, I'm going to add the magenta back in. So I'm going to put a little magenta over here. And I'm going to add that into the gold areas. So again, I'm going to take the wet stamp, slightly wet, dip it into the magenta. So I'm going to have a slightly wet impression. And I'm going to put that in here. Switch it out for the other stamp. And a little bit of this one. Okay, so now we have the double layers of the watery first impression and the stamps on top. So the stamps from the plate and the stamps added on top. And we have two in that nice color palette. That light ultramarine blue is quite nice. So let's try putting that on the last one because this is so dark. So I'm going to put out the light ultramarine blue and start. And it's got water and magenta. So that's making it nice and soft. And we'll get a little bit more of that out. When you put the paint onto your plate for foam stamping, you put a little heavier layer than you would for just a regular gel print. So this is blending with the magenta, so it's not quite so bright. Let's see if we can brighten it up a little bit. So I've got the water and I've got the magenta, so I've got like a soft print here. And I like that. I don't want it to be too bold. I'm going for this wet, watery look. So there we go. And then we'll do a little bit of the metallic on top of this one. So the gold with this one. And we'll just add a little bit of that in. You can make it, the second and third generation stamp will be a little bit lighter. You don't have to re-ink the stamp every single time if you want to go for a subtle print. So here we have a nice, soft, subtle printing with water and paint on top of the watery original print. So these came out really nice. They're all in the same color palette, but they're quite different. So there's that one. Let's move this. Definitely have to clean those. But here's the third one. Here's the second one. So this one is a medium value. This one's sort of darker. It's got a lot more ultramarine blue in it. And then this one was on the light ultramarine base. So we've got three beautiful combinations of layered, wet, watery Art Nouveau foam stamps. Well, I hope you found that entertaining and inspiring and something that you would like to try. So I hope that you have tons of fun and enjoy the process of gel printing, no matter how you choose to do it. I'll see you right back here next week.